Earlier, one of the things that we learned about is how you can create formula in Excel using essentially what you use in a calculator, the plus sign, the minus sign, multiplication, etc. But Excel can make this even easier for you by using things called functions. Functions can do all sorts of things. When I say all sorts of things, I could make unlimited videos on each individual function that exists. So I'm just going to go over a couple of functions that you're most likely to use in a basic statistical way, or at least a basic way to look at your data. So over here on the left, I have a list of different functions, and it essentially is telling Excel to do something. It's telling Excel to take the sum of a set of numbers, to count the number of numbers, to take an average or standard deviation, to find the min, to find the max. You can do things like create a random set of numbers. You can do things like, there's so many things that you can do. You can merge multiple cells together. You can create really cool mathematical things. So there's a lot that you can do with functions. So let's talk about how you do a function. Remember, any single time that you want to do anything in Excel, that you want Excel to calculate, you have to start a cell with the equal sign. And that's still true if you're going to use a function. You're going to type out the function name, and while there are ways to not necessarily automate, but use buttons in Excel to find functions, I actually think it's more beneficial to type out the function name itself and Google it. If you're like, oh, I want to take the average of a group of cells, how do I do that? You're going to find pages and pages of Excel guides that tell you different functions to do that, and then you can just type it in. So let's say I have these 10 students and these 10 test scores, and I want the average of them. What was the average test score? So I put in my equal sign because, again, I want Excel to do something for me. I'm going to type in the function of average. And it's nice because it actually gives us a couple of different function options that have average as part of their text. So the first one, it gives me a little tooltip, says returns the average or the arithmetic mean of its arguments, which can be numbers, arrays, references, etc. I can click the other ones to see what they do. This one is average if, so I can find the average of the set of data as long as it meets a certain criteria. So I could do the average of these test scores as long as this test score is above an 80, for example. The D average in a list or database, but I'm just going to stick with average. Now, I don't need to click it or anything. I was just clicking it to see the tooltip, just letting you know that is popping up. Now, after you type in a function, you need to kind of tell what is it averaging. So after every function, you're going to have an open parenthesis. And it's giving you a tooltip of what it wants next. So for example, it says average number 1. So my number 1 is 75. What's your next number? And your next number, so 92, 97, etc., etc. I'm not going to type all of them. And then whenever I'm done inserting the values that I want, I'm going to go ahead and close the parenthesis. And look, at least for those top 2 test scores, I had an average of 88. This was much faster than me typing equals 75 plus 92 plus 97 divided by 3, or if I had a much bigger data set, like even these 10, typing in all of this divided by 10. Now you might be like, well, you still typed in all the numbers. Is it really that much faster? So another thing we could do, I'm still going to start the same way, equals average, open parenthesis. I'm going to click on the cell. So instead of me typing in 75, I'm just clicking the cell, comma, next one, comma, next one. And you see how fast this is for me to do versus typing all of them? And I actually was able to do all 10 versus getting tired after 3. What's nice about this versus typing in is maybe I look back at my grades, I'm like, oh, this person didn't get a 99, I misclicked. I'm going to put in 89. You see how that formula automatically updates because I just said, hey, take the average with cell E8, not of 99, of E8. So if I change what's in E8, it's going to update formulas that have E8 in it. Now, this is still a little cumbersome, right? I click 10 numbers. You know, you might have data sets that have 100 numbers. That is not sustainable. So the most sustainable, the fastest way to use functions on a set of data is using what we call a range. So I'm going to start the same way, equals, average, open parenthesis. I am going to click, and you notice that my cursor is an open white plus sign. I'm going to click on the first set, and I'm still holding down, and I'm going to drag to highlight all of the cells I want to average. And you'll notice as I'm doing this, it's showing me an outline of what I have selected. And if you look at my formula, it's changing my range based on what I've highlighted. So you can hand type in a range, and sorry, that's blocking. Let me just close this parenthesis real quick. You could I could have manually entered E3 colon E12. There's nothing wrong with manually doing it. I personally find it easier to just click and drag so that I'm not like, okay, is that E? Is that 3? Enter, you get the same exact thing. So both doing it individual cells and doing the range will give you the same exact answer. But doing the range is so much faster than doing each cell individually, especially when you have large data sets. Again, a range can be typed, so I'm going to do the same thing, equals average, and we wanted the range of E3 colon to E12. It does the same exact thing. I personally find the clicking and dragging to be a lot faster, but you do what works best for you. So that's kind of how we use our ranges and our functions. Now I was using the average. I want to show you one just to give you an idea of other ways Excel kind of helps you figure out what to do. So let's say I want a random set of numbers. I need it for making this video. That's actually where these numbers came from. So I did a rand array, and I Googled this. I just Googled make a random set of numbers, and I found this rand array. And it says returns an array of random numbers. Cool, that's what I wanted. Open parenthesis, because I need to tell it what it's doing. And it's telling me, hey, here's all the different arguments you need for your function. How many rows of numbers do you want? So I'll use what I used before. I wanted 10 rows. How many columns of numbers do you want? I just want one column. What's the minimum? So that's where it says min. What is the min value of what you want? Well, the min value, if we're doing test grades, let's say, give me random numbers with at least a score of 15. Max value, let's do a max score of 100. And then integer, do I want it to, do I want it as a decimal? Do I want a whole number? So it says false, write in false if I want a decimal, and write in true if I want an integer. So I do want an integer. I'm going to close parenthesis. And look, it just popped out 10 numbers for me. So I show you that not because I care if you know that function, but that Excel is kind of helping you figure out how to fill in these functions. And if it's not making sense, just Google it. Like I said, using Excel functions is very Googleable, which can be very helpful for you. So hopefully that helped you out understanding what functions are, how to use ranges in those functions, and then finally, I'll just use test scores as an example. Maybe I just quickly want to know, kind of like how these test scores are. I have these in different orders. Maybe I just want to sort this data. So maybe I just want to sort the test scores from high to low. So I'm going to highlight these test scores. And on the Home tab, which is probably where you're defaulted, there's a button that says Sort and Filter. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I want to sort these smallest to largest. Now, I got a warning. It said Excel found data next to your selection. Since you have not selected this data, it will not be sorted. What do you want to do? Expand the selection or continue with the current selection? So let me kind of show you what both of these do. I'm going to do continue with the current selection. I highlighted what I wanted to sort. you should listen to me. So I click sort. Cool. It sorted my test scores from low to high. But notice it didn't move the student ID number with it. So just to show you, I'm going to just go back and forth with undo and redo. So here was my original test scores. You see the ID numbers. Here are my new test scores, or my sorted test scores. Depending on what you're doing, maybe you don't care. You're like, I don't care who that 54 went to. So in this case, that'd be fine. But if like, oh, wait, I wanted to remember that this student was the one who got that score. So let's go back to those original scores. I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to go to sort and filter. I'm going to do sort smallest to largest. But now I'm going to say, you know what? Yeah, I want you to expand the selection. When you sort out these test scores, keep those student ID numbers with it. And you notice the test scores are still arranged lowest to highest, but it moved the student ID numbers with it, which can be really helpful depending on what you're trying to do with your data. Another thing that you can do, I'm not going to explore it too much, but just show you this button exists. I'm going to highlight both sets of data. I'm going to go back to sort and filter. I'm going to do custom sort. So Excel automatically said, oh, you've got text at the top. It automatically checked this box, my data has headers. Well, I don't want to sort the word test scores in my series of numbers. So it's asking you, how do you want to sort things? Oh yeah, I want to sort by test scores, smallest to largest. Or actually, I don't want that. I want to do it by student ID number, and I want to go largest to smallest. For this really small data set, using this tool doesn't really make much sense. But you could probably easily see if you have larger data sets with 10 plus columns, you might want to sort by this column first, and then I could add a level and do by this column second. Now all the student ID numbers are unique, but let's say it was gender. I had 5 males and 5 females. Well, all the males are going to be grouped together, all the females grouped together, but then I can add a level to sort, okay, within the males, what was the range of test scores? Within the females, what's lowest to highest test score? So again, this data doesn't make sense to use this tool, but just know this tool exists. This is really for if you have multiple levels of sorting you'd like to do. So with that, you kind of got a basic idea how to manage your data and to do cool things with your data using those functions. But be sure to use shortcuts like using ranges and also reading those tooltips, especially when you're using a function you're not familiar with.